So what is the greatest unsolved mystery in the history of the world? I mean, is it the deepest, darkest trenches of the ocean, or maybe the absolute edge of the observable universe? Actually, no. The ultimate mystery is literally the very thing you are using to process my words right now. Your own mind and your own behavior.
Welcome to This Explainer, the mystery of the mind, a psychological investigation. Today, we're diving deep into exactly how humanity has tried to solve this incredible puzzle. It is a wildly fast-paced journey, packed with twists, turns, and these massive, radical shifts in scientific thinking that honestly completely define how you view yourself today.
Okay, let's dive into this. First, we looked inward. Back in the late 19th century, way before we had advanced brain scanners or anything like that, our very first attempt to crack this case was simply to look inside. This sparked a school of thought called structuralism, led by Wilhelm Wundt. He had this idea that we could understand our conscious experience by basically breaking it down into its smallest, most fundamental parts. To do it, he used this highly subjective process called introspection. You'd have these trained individuals who would literally just sit there trying to observe and report on their own inner thoughts in real time, which, as you can probably guess, is a nearly impossible thing to actually measure scientifically.
So that led to a pretty massive shift. Investigators started asking, but what was it for?
Enter functionalism, led by William James, who, by the way, was heavily influenced by Charles Darwin's evolutionary theory. This approach completely flipped the script. Instead of just obsessing over the isolated little parts of the mind, functionalists started asking how our mental activities actually help us adapt to our environment to survive. It wasn't about what a thought was anymore, it was about what a thought was actually for in the real world. You know, like how a sudden spike of fear keeps you from stepping off the edge of a steep cliff.
And then we went dark.
We plunged straight into the hidden, unseen, and frankly, often uncomfortable parts of the human psyche that most people didn't really want to talk about. This brings us to psychoanalytic theory, championed by the one and only Sigmund Freud. Now, Freud totally threw out the idea that we are these entirely rational, fully conscious beings. He argued that the true, terrifying drivers of our behavior are actually buried deep, deep within the unconscious mind. To him, things like bizarre dreams, accidental slips of the tongue, random free association, they weren't just simple mistakes. They were literally the only clues we had to unlock our hidden motives.
But then came the behaviorist takeover.
Relying on all those hidden, totally subjective thoughts just did not sit well with the broader scientific community. They wanted hard, observable facts. So the entire concept of the inner mind was completely thrown out the window. Behaviorism transformed psychology into this strictly objective science. You had researchers like Pavlov, Watson, and Skinner basically arguing, hey, if you can't observe it, you can't study it. They turned the grand mystery of humanity into this highly clinical study of conditioned reflexes, rewards, and punishments. Think of Pavlov's famous salivating dogs. Suddenly, we were being viewed as nothing more than biological machines just reacting to external stimuli.
Which obviously brings up a massive question. But are we just reflexes?
I mean, are we really just biological machines? Is the entire human experience just this collection of reflexes and conditioned habits? Well, this cold, super-mechanical view sparked a major rebellion. Now, what's really interesting about this is how pioneers like Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow pushed back hard. They spearheaded the humanistic movement. They totally rejected the cold determinism of the behaviorists and that really dark pessimism of psychoanalysis. Instead, they refocused the whole investigation on human potential, arguing that we all have this innate, built-in capacity for good, for personal growth, and for self-direction.
And then, the mind returns.
As we moved into the 1950s, the world was shifting fast. We had new technologies, the birth of early computer science, massive leaps in neuroscience, and it sparked a brand new era. A major catalyst for this was Noam Chomsky, a fiercely influential linguist. He basically stepped up and said that psychology was being remarkably short-sighted by just ignoring how the mind actually functions. His pushback was huge. It helped spark the cognitive revolution, which officially brought the inner workings of the mind, how we process language, compute information, solve problems, right back into the scientific spotlight.
And this brilliantly illustrates how all of these converging ideas eventually landed on a really powerful, unified framework. Modern clinical psychology heavily utilizes the cognitive behavioral connection. It beautifully maps out how our internal thoughts, our emotional feelings, and our external behaviors aren't just isolated things happening in a vacuum. They are all completely interconnected. We finally started looking at the whole picture.
But as our understanding grew, we had to stop and ask, but who was solving the mystery?
We had to look at the investigators themselves. Because for a really long time, psychology was what researchers actually called a womanless field. It was heavily dominated by Western white male academics, meaning the entire scientific understanding of human behavior was being built squarely on the inherent, largely unexamined biases of that one specific demographic.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because brilliant minds relentlessly fought to break those educational barriers down. Look at this rapid succession. In 1894, Margaret Floy Washburn becomes the first woman to earn a PhD in psychology. Then in 1920, Frances Cecil Sumner becomes the first African-American to receive a PhD in the field. And by 1933, Inez Beverly Prosser becomes the first African-American woman to earn her PhD, doing this incredibly groundbreaking work that directly challenged segregated educational practices.
This diversification didn't just change the faces in the room, it forced the actual science to be so much better. In 1968, Naomi Weinstein delivered this incredibly powerful critique. She called out male psychologists for, as she put it, constructing the psychology of women entirely out of their own cultural biases, all without careful experimental tests. Her work sparked a massive feminist revolution in psychology, basically demanding rigorous, unbiased evidence over lazy societal assumptions.
And because of those pioneers and modern technology, the investigation multiplies.
So the crucial point is that today, the field has exploded. It's grown so incredibly complex that the American Psychological Association now contains an astounding 54 distinct divisions.
These divisions really show the vast interdisciplinary reality of modern psychology. We aren't just looking at one theory anymore. We've got biopsychology and neuroscience exploring the physical brain itself, cognitive psychology studying human thought, clinical and counseling psychology treating individuals, you've got forensic psychology operating right there in courtrooms, and sport and exercise psychology optimizing physical performance. The applications literally span across every single aspect of our lives.
But through all of this, the mystery is you.
Through all these wild historical shifts, from once early introspection to Freud's dark unconscious, all the way to modern neuroscience and forensic profiling, the ultimate subject of this centuries-long investigation remains exactly the same. Every theory, every experiment, every breakthrough has really just been an attempt to understand what makes you, you. As technology rapidly advances and our understanding deepens, this psychological investigation is far from over. Honestly, it might just be getting started. So I want to leave you with this final thought. How will your mind shape the next revolution?
If you want to keep solving these incredible mysteries with us, you know exactly what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new explainer, and let me know your thoughts on the future of psychological discovery right down in the comments below. See you next time.